And for more on the situation in Turkey, I'm joined by Adnan Zulfiqar, fellow at the Truman National Security Project. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You know, we've been talking about the situation in Turkey. Let's take a look back over the last few days. Are you surprised that these protests have grown as they have?
Yes, frankly, I mean, the surprising thing about these protests is not even so much how much their growth, but the fact that they are really leaderless, very similar to sort of the Occupy movements that occurred here. You know, protests do occur in Turkey, and you do see them on occasion. You've seen them in the Kurdish region and other places, and you'll have significant numbers come out. But what's particularly unique here is that these don't seem to be led by anyone, and it is really a spontaneous bubbling over of resentment that has been brewing for a little while now.
It's not what you think of when you think of Turkey. Could we see anything more like this? And what happens next for Erdogan? Because you have the people there, and it seems like there is this sort of defiance more toward him than the police.
Absolutely. I mean, this started off as a small environmentalist protest of about 100 people in a park which was largely insignificant for most folks who are now participating in the protest. But what it has become now is really targeting a lot of the power, the unchecked power that people feel that Erdogan has now gained. It's clear that his party has a mandate, and he's reminded people of that in the last couple of days as well, that he won 50% of the vote. He's had 3 successive wins in the elections. But that has ended up meaning a mandate of power, but people have felt that has also been a monopoly of power, where they don't feel as though they are consulted on a lot of things, that he has taken the AKP and really made it into what they frame as a sultanate as opposed to an actual democracy. So yes, absolutely, it seems like the majority of the ire of people is focused on Erdogan and focused on what they see is his unchecked power.
So how does he take that back? Because now there is this perception that he is basically ignoring or not even considering what is taking place in the country.
Well, that's one of the surprising things for me here has been that Erdogan is an astute politician. I mean, he's been in this political game in Turkey for a long time. He spent time in prison. He's been through a lot, and he really prides himself as well as having been raised on the tough streets of Istanbul. So he's always been pretty well calculated in these situations. Here, though, it seems as though he has made some miscalculations. Now, Erdogan is a brutish politician. You know, he is of the Chris Christie in New Jersey type of politics. He says it like he feels it, and he puts it all on the line. And at times, that has gained him a lot of popularity, like Davos and his sort of outburst there gained him a lot of popularity internationally, but it also gained him a fair amount of criticism. And that's what we're seeing here as well. How he turns this back is going to be interesting. He's chosen to dig in his heels. He's chosen to decide that, well, I'm going to double down and I'm not going to let these protesters win their agenda. I'm not sure that's going to be a winning strategy here. It seems like a lot of resentment has bubbled over, and there are people who are not usually allied together that are out on the streets together. In addition to that, his president, Abdullah Gül, has come out and taken a more restrained tone and actually said some things which people are viewing as a bit of a contradiction to how Erdogan has approached this. So it's interesting to see what type of fissures may be occurring even within the AKP over this incident. And this all comes under the backdrop of the fact that Erdogan has been working hard to potentially switch Turkey from a parliamentary system to a presidential system, and then try to potentially take that presidency himself.
Well, and he's also been working hard, trying to gain support for the situation with Syria. And I know it doesn't have really anything to do with this, but how does this affect what's going on in Syria and the refugees that are coming in to that country? Could we see any protests maybe related to that situation?
Well, clearly that the situation in Syria is testing Turkey's capacity in many respects, in two primary ways. The first way is obviously the refugee situation is one that's unprecedented in Turkish history. So they're having to deal with this influx of hundreds of thousands of people who are now in the country and who are really sort of straining the Turkish economy, et cetera, in some respects. In addition to that, it's just instability, on your borders. But the second reason as well is that people, particularly a lot of the folks on the streets now, many of them are also protesting against what they feel is Erdogan's increasingly Islamist view of Turkey. Just recently, alcohol was banned after 10 p.m. by parliamentary decree, but people viewed that again as an encroachment on their secular liberal, ideals. Similarly, they feel as though Erdogan's support of the rebels, many of whom are very Islamist, is again his betrayal of the secular ideals. I'm not sure that's fair necessarily, but this is what you're seeing among a lot of the secularists who are on the street, who are saying that Syria as well is another indication of how Erdogan views himself more as an Ottoman sultan than as a democratic leader.
All right, Adnan Zulfiqar, we appreciate your insight. As always, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.